who remarries. Orthodox.
George Siegel tonight, 11:30.
Action News. Delaware Valley's leading news program with Steve Levy and Bob Hite.
Good evening. The Flyers send the North Stars packing, and the FBI closes in on espionage activities. But the big story on Action News tonight is the temperature. Right now, it's 2 degrees and falling in Philadelphia, where it's expected to finally stop at 2 below, and in the northern and western suburbs, it may go to 10 below. But that's not the worst of it. We have meteorologist Evan Myers of AccuWeather on the line to explain why. Evan?
Well, that's right, Bob. The strong winds blowing between 15 and 30 miles an hour combined with the low temperatures produce a wind chill factor of about 35 below, and we expect the wind to keep up tonight, and with temperatures falling to 10 below in some northern and western suburbs, wind chill readings will reach minus 50. The record low temperature for tonight is 5, set back in 1965, and as soon as the clock strikes midnight, we'll break that record. Luckily, though, we won't be hit with the brunt of the cold air up in the Poconos and across northern Pennsylvania and throughout most of New York State. Temperatures tomorrow won't climb above 0. Out in Dayton, Ohio today, the high only reached 10 below, and records throughout the Plains and Great Lakes states were broken by as much as 8 degrees, and some of those records have stood for more than a century.
Evan,
yes,
what is the cause for this incredibly cold weather?
Well, we have a northwesterly flow of air right from central Canada, and that will continue to send us cold air right through the week. Now, the bulk of the cold air will be by us by Tuesday, but we don't look for temperatures above freezing all week.
Well, I remember at the beginning of the winter season, you gentlemen out there had predicted that the temperatures would be below normal this winter, and boy, you were right on the money. And I thank you very much, Evan.
Okay, Bob, keep warm.
I will try. Evan Myers of AccuWeather. Once again, we want to stress the danger these conditions pose to a public unaccustomed to them, and that's us. Hazardous driving conditions almost goes without saying tonight. The snow will freeze solid tonight, becoming as dangerous on the roadways as ice would be. Perhaps the biggest danger is a breakdown. Don't drive if it's not absolutely necessary, and should you break down, police say pull as far off the road as possible, put out flares if you have them, and turn on your emergency flashers. They say stay in the car out of the wind, and if the engine is running, be sure to turn it off. Better that you be cold than asphyxiated. It seems almost certain now that Gary Gilmore will get his wish tomorrow. For having shot and killed 2 fellow citizens, he will himself be shot and killed by 5 fellow citizens, a firing squad formed by the state of Utah. Tomorrow morning at dawn, the 5 anonymous riflemen will bring the barrels of their .30-30 carbines to bear on a bullseye pinned over the heart of Gilmore's hooded figure, and firing simultaneously, they will perform one of the most publicized executions in history. There is still time, of course, for a stay of execution, but as we learn in this report, all efforts today proved fruitless.
Opponents of capital punishment consider this their last reasonable hope. An ACLU lawyer delivered the papers to the court. The argument that Gilmore's death would prejudice the appeals of 2 other condemned killers in Utah, 2 who don't want to die. But Justices Blackmun and White, speaking for a majority of the court, turned them down. They didn't say why, which meant this almost surely is Gary Gilmore's final night. He has had visitors, his young lawyer who fought to help him die, his cousin, uncle, and aunt with whom he lived in Provo, and another lawyer. They say he is calm, almost jovial, considers himself lucky to plan for his death, spent the time consoling them about what's happening. Gilmore is still in maximum security. He ate, by request, the regular prison supper. And in the morning, following a medical examination, Gilmore will enter a curtained vehicle to ride to the site of his death. The firing squad will have assembled, we have learned, in one of these buildings, probably an old abandoned cannery. There, with sound-absorbing sandbags on a dirt floor, with 4 invited witnesses, 2 doctors, the warden, and the firing squad, Gary Gilmore will be shot. All efforts to stop it will have been in vain. Tonight's prayer vigil just outside the prison grounds will have been a notable demonstration against capital punishment, but nothing more. And many people here, for and against capital punishment, believe that when Gary Gilmore is dead, just after sunrise, so too will be the battle against capital punishment. The floodgates they predict will open all across the country. Greg Dobbs, ABC News at the Utah State Prison.
That last remark is indeed true, because Gilmore is not the only man in America scheduled to be executed this week. On Wednesday in Texas, Jerry Jurek will be electrocuted unless efforts for a stay of execution in his case succeed. The U.S. Supreme Court will consider a stay on Monday. Jurek, like Gilmore, has said he wants to die, but recent reports suggest his attitude may have since changed. He is sentenced to death for the murder of a 10-year-old girl. In another case, Cape May County Police report the arrest tonight of 63-year-old Welford V. Allen in the killing of a 73-year-old Woodbine, New Jersey farmer and his 69-year-old sister. Police say Allen was a boarder at the couple's home, but so far have not determined a motive. The victims are identified as Ernest Locklear and his sister Hite. They both were killed with a shotgun. Fire killed 53-year-old Leroy Slater today in Philadelphia. The blaze broke out sometime around 3:30 this morning in the living room of his home at 1938 Garrett Street in the south section of the city. Officials say Slater had returned home at about 2 a.m. with his cousin, who was blind. The two men apparently fell asleep in two living room chairs. The cousin, who was not identified, awoke when he smelled smoke but was unable to rouse Mr. Slater. He fled into the street and was unharmed. Slater was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause is believed to be careless smoking. News was released today that the special prosecutor probing Fairview State Hospital has reportedly talked to a federal prison inmate believed to have important information about patient deaths at that facility. According to sources, the federal prisoner may have been involved in the 1966 death of patient Robert Jackson and also may know about the deaths of 4 other patients. Grand jury hearings are scheduled to open February 1st into the investigation. Last Tuesday, France outraged millions of people when it released Palestinian terrorist Abu Daoud. Daoud is suspected of having been the mastermind behind the 1972 Munich Olympic massacre.
Daoud's release appears to have been a conscious decision by the French government to prevent terrorist reprisals and to maintain good relations with the Arabs. This is a French Mirage jet fighter. The day after Daoud was freed, news broke in Paris that a major arms deal had just been consummated with the Arabs. France is going to sell Egypt 200 of these planes at $6 million apiece. Under President Giscard d'Estaing, France has continued the policy it began 9 years ago of befriending the Arab states. This has lent France the prestige of having its own uniquely French and wholly un-American approach to the Mideast. But it's also based on economics. France is utterly dependent on imported oil, 2/3 of which comes from the Mideast. The day before Daoud was released, a delegation of Arab ambassadors came here to the foreign ministry to point out the damage that was being done to French-Arab relations. They helped persuade the French of what they already believed, that their own special relationship with the Arabs was just more important than world opinion. Jack Smith, ABC News, in Paris.
In other international news, FBI agents said today they have charged 2 Americans with conspiring to commit espionage by passing secret documents and other material to a Soviet agent in Mexico. According to FBI Director Clarence Kelly, 23-year-old Christopher Boyce of Rancho Palos Verdes, California, was arrested today at his home. A second man, 25-year-old Andrew Lee, also of Palos Verdes, is in the custody of Mexican officials. Boyce and Lee are charged with conspiring with Boris A. Grishin, a Soviet agent. If convicted, they could be executed. When
the war ended in Europe, news literally radiated around the world. As they had from the beginning, people everywhere followed the events of the war on radio. When news of the surrender of the German High Command reached America 50 years ago today,